On April 16, 2026, the Los Angeles Police Department's Robbery-Homicide Division, the most elite investigative unit in one of the most crime-ridden cities in America, showed up heavily armed, some in tactical gear, to take a 21-year-old music artist into custody. No bail was set. No warning was given to the public. And for millions of fans who had followed this young man's meteoric rise from a bedroom in Houston to the top of the Billboard charts, the news hit like a freight train out of nowhere. But here's the thing. This story did not come out of nowhere. There were breadcrumbs. There were clues. There was a missing child, an abandoned car, and a months-long secret investigation that most people had absolutely no idea was even happening. My name is Jenny, and today on Jenny Exposes, we are going all the way in on the D4vd case with every confirmed detail, every verified fact, every piece of this devastating puzzle. Because this story deserves to be told right, and Celeste Rivas Hernandez deserves to be remembered. Stay with me because this is going to be a long one, and every single second of it matters. Before we go any further, I need you to do something for me right now. If you are new here, hit that subscribe button and tap the bell so you never miss a video. And if this kind of honest, no-fluff, fact-first coverage is what you have been looking for, drop a like on this video right now, because it genuinely helps this channel reach more people who deserve to know the truth. Now let's get into it. Let's start from the very beginning, because to understand how we got here, you need to understand who the DVD actually is. Not just the artist, but the person, the background, the rise. His real name is David Anthony Burke. He is 21 years old. He was born and raised in Houston, Texas, and by all public accounts, his path to fame was one of the most unlikely and genuinely impressive origin stories in recent music history. He was a bedroom artist. He made music in his room, posted it online, and then something happened that very few artists ever experienced. The internet found him and absolutely lost its mind over what it heard. In 2022, a song called Romantic Homicide started circulating on TikTok, and it did not just get a few thousand plays, it exploded. It resonated with an entire generation of young listeners who felt seen in the melancholy, the raw emotion, and the almost haunting quality of the production. That song peaked at number 4 on Billboard's Hot Rock and Alternative Songs chart. Number 4. For a kid from Houston who made music in his bedroom, that is not a small deal. That is a seismic moment. The music industry took notice immediately, and before long, D4vd was signed to Darkroom and Interscope Records, two of the most powerful labels in the business. He released his debut EP, Petals to Thorns, and followed it up with The Lost Petals in 2023. His fan base was young, passionate, and deeply loyal. He was on the kind of upward trajectory that most artists spend their entire careers chasing and never reaching. And then, on April 16, 2026, all of that came to a complete stop. But to understand what happened on that day, we have to go back even further, back to 2024, back to Lake Elsinore, California, and back to a family who was about to experience every parent's worst nightmare. Her name was Celeste Rivas Hernandez. She was 14 years old. I want you to hold that for a second. 14 years old. She was a child. She had her whole life ahead of her. She had a father named Jesus Rivas and a mother who loved her. And at some point in April 2024, Celeste was last seen in Lake Elsinore, California. Her family reported her missing. And then the waiting began, that agonizing, torturous waiting that no family should ever have to endure, where every single day that passes without answers is its own kind of unbearable grief. Celeste's family went through that. They waited, and they waited. And for months, there were no answers. According to confirmed reporting, Celeste and D4vd had been linked to each other in several ways prior to her disappearance. The specific nature of that connection has not been fully detailed in public reporting as of the time of this video, but investigators were aware of it, and it would ultimately become a central thread in the investigation that followed. I am not going to speculate on the details of that connection beyond what has been confirmed, because this case is still unfolding, and the last thing I want to do is muddy the waters with guesswork. What I can tell you is that the connection existed, it was documented, and it mattered. Now here is where the story takes a turn that is almost impossible to wrap your head around, because the way this case broke open was not the result of a tip or a witness coming forward or some dramatic confrontation. It was a smell. At some point after Celeste's disappearance, a Tesla belonging to DVD was found abandoned in the Hollywood Hills. Not towed immediately, not flagged right away, just sitting there, abandoned. The car sat in that location for weeks before it was eventually towed to an impound lot. And it was at that impound lot, during what should have been a completely routine process, that staff members noticed something was very, very wrong. There was a strong odor coming from the vehicle, an odor that impound staff recognized as something that required immediate attention. They contacted the police. And on September 8 through 10 of 2025, authorities made a discovery inside the trunk of that car that would change everything. They found human remains. Those remains were later identified as Celeste Rivas Hernandez. Her mother identified her by a tattoo on her right index finger. A tattoo. Think about that for a moment. A mother identifies her 14-year-old daughter's remains by a tattoo on her finger. I cannot imagine the grief in that room. I cannot imagine what that family went through in that moment. And I think it is important that we sit with the weight of that reality rather than rushing past it. Celeste was a real person. She had a mother who recognized her. She had a father who was waiting for answers. And now there were devastating, heartbreaking answers, but answers nonetheless. So now, investigators had remains. They had a vehicle. They had a connection between the vehicle's owner and the victim. And they had a case on their hands that was about to become one of the most serious and high-profile investigations in Los Angeles. Here is where things get particularly interesting from an investigative standpoint, because the timeline between the discovery of the remains in September 2025 and the arrest in April 2026 is roughly 7 months. 7 months. And during that entire time, LAPD never publicly named D4vd as a suspect. There were no press conferences pointing fingers. There were no leaks to the media about where the investigation was heading. It was quiet. Almost eerily quiet. And there is a very specific reason for that. According to reporting from NPR, D4vd had been the subject of a secret grand jury investigation conducted by the Los Angeles County Grand Jury. Now, for anyone who is not familiar with how grand jury proceedings work, and honestly, most people are not because they are not designed to be public, here is what you need to know. A grand jury is a group of citizens who are convened to review evidence in serious cases and determine whether there is probable cause to move forward with formal proceedings. Grand jury investigations are conducted in secret. Witnesses can be called, evidence can be presented, and the target of the investigation typically has no idea it is happening. This is a tool that is specifically designed for complex, serious cases where investigators need time to build a comprehensive picture before making a move. The fact that the LA County Grand Jury was involved in this case tells you something very important. It tells you that the people working this investigation were not rushing. They were being methodical. They were building something. And when they felt they had what they needed, LAPD's Robbery-Homicide Division made the call. And here is why that unit matters. Robbery-homicide is not your average detective division. This is the unit that handles the most serious, most complex, most high-profile cases in the entire city of Los Angeles. When robbery-homicide gets involved, it means the department has decided this case deserves its absolute best resources and its most experienced investigators. You do not call in robbery-homicide for something routine. On April 16, 2026, a Thursday, at approximately 5 in the evening, detectives from the Robbery-Homicide Division moved in. The arrest happened in the Hollywood Hills, near the Sunset Strip. Officers were heavily armed. Some were in tactical gear. David Anthony Burke, known professionally as D4vd, was taken into custody. He was 21 years old. He was held without bail, and the music world, the internet, and an entire generation of fans who had grown up listening to his songs had no idea what was coming. Now, I need to be very clear about something here, because I think clarity on this point is absolutely essential. As of April 21st, 2026, DVD has been arrested on suspicion of the act in question. He has not yet been formally charged. There is an important legal distinction between those two things, and I think you deserve to understand it. Being arrested means law enforcement had probable cause to take someone into custody. Being charged means a prosecutor has reviewed the evidence and made the decision to formally file a case. Those are two separate steps in the legal process. According to a statement from the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office, the case is expected to be presented to the Major Crimes Division, where prosecutors will review the facts and the evidence to determine whether there is sufficient evidence to move forward with formal charges. As of the time of this video, that process is still ongoing. His representatives have not made any public comment. And under the law of the United States, David Anthony Burke is presumed innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. I am telling you that not as a formality, but because it is simply and completely true, and any honest coverage of this story has to include it. What I can tell you is that the family of Celeste Rivas Hernandez has responded to this arrest. Her father, Jesus Rivas, is represented by attorney Patrick Steinfeld, and when the news broke that an arrest had been made in his daughter's case, Jesus Rivas responded through his attorney. His response, as reported by multiple outlets, including TMZ and E! News, was just two words. Two words that carry the weight of almost 2 years of unanswered questions, of sleepless nights, of grief that most of us will never fully understand. Those two words were, "Thank God." Thank God. After nearly 2 years of waiting, after the horror of identifying his daughter's remains, after all of those two words, thank God. And I think that response tells you everything you need to know about what this family has been through. They are not celebrating. They are not triumphant. They are exhausted. They are grieving. And they have been given at least a partial answer to the question that has haunted them since April of 2024. Whether justice ultimately follows, whether formal charges are filed, whether there is a trial, whether there is a conviction, that is all still ahead of them. But for now, after all of that waiting, there is an arrest. And a father said, "Thank God." I want to come back to Celeste for a moment, because I think in stories like this, the victim can sometimes get lost in the noise of the bigger narrative. The celebrity connection, the legal drama, the social media frenzy. And I refuse to let that happen here. Celeste Rivas Hernandez was 14 years old. She was from the Lake Elsinore area of California. She had a family who loved her. She had a mother who could identify her by a tattoo on her right index finger, which means she had a mother who knew her, who paid attention to her, who noticed the small details about her child the way loving mothers do. She was a real person with a real life. And whatever happened to her, whatever the full truth of this story ultimately turns out to be, she deserves to be remembered as more than a detail in someone else's story. She is the story. She is the reason this investigation happened. She is the reason this arrest was made. And she is the reason that her father, through his attorney, said thank God when he heard the news. Now let us talk about what happens next, because I know a lot of you are going to have questions about where this case goes from here. The honest answer is that we do not fully know yet, and I think it is important to be upfront about that rather than pretending we have a crystal ball. Here is what we do know. The case will be presented to the Major Crimes Division of the LA County District Attorney's Office. Prosecutors there will review everything: the evidence, the timeline, the forensic findings, the connections between the parties involved, and they will make a determination about whether to file formal charges. If charges are filed, the case will move into the arraignment phase, where d4vd would formally hear those charges in court and enter a plea. From there, the legal process can take many different paths: pretrial hearings, motions, potential plea negotiations, or a full trial. These things can take months or even years to fully resolve. What we also know is that the involvement of the Robbery-Homicide Division and the grand jury suggests that investigators believe they have a substantial case. Grand jury proceedings are not initiated on thin evidence. Robbery-homicide is not called in on weak leads. The 7 months between the discovery of the remains and the arrest suggest that investigators were building something methodically rather than rushing. All of that points to a case that law enforcement believes is solid. But what exactly that case looks like, what the specific evidence is, what the timeline of events that prosecutors will ultimately allege actually involves, none of that has been made public yet, and I am not going to speculate on it. What I will say is that this case has the potential to be one of the most significant and closely watched legal proceedings of the next several years. The intersection of a rising music artist, a missing child, a secret grand jury, an abandoned car, and an elite investigative unit is the kind of story that courts, journalists, Legal analysts and the general public will be following extremely closely. And I will be here for every update, but only when there is something confirmed and real to report. I'd also want to address the fan community for a moment, because I know that a significant portion of the people watching this video have been genuine fans of d4vd's music. And I think it is completely valid to feel complicated emotions right now. You can feel grief about what allegedly happened to Celeste. You can feel shock about the arrest. You can feel confusion about how someone whose music meant something to you could be connected to something this serious. All of those feelings can exist at the same time, and none of them cancel out the others. What I would encourage, though, is to resist the urge to dismiss the facts of this case in order to protect the image of an artist you admire. Celeste's family deserves better than that. The truth deserves better than that. The music is what it is. Romantic Homicide will still be the song that millions of people discovered in 2022. The Billboard chart position will still be documented. The record deal will still have happened. None of that disappears. But none of it changes the reality of what is being alleged either. We can hold both of those truths at the same time, that someone created art that resonated with people, and that the same person is now at the center of an extremely serious investigation into the disappearance and passing of a 14-year-old child. I want to close by bringing it back to the timeline one more time, because I think seeing it laid out clearly really drives home just how significant this moment is. In April of 2024, Celeste Rivas Hernandez was last seen in Lake Elsinore, California. Her family reported her missing. In the months that followed, a Tesla belonging to d4vd sat abandoned in the Hollywood Hills before being towed to an impound lot. Between September 8th and 10 of 2025, authorities discovered human remains in the trunk of that vehicle. Those remains were identified as Celeste. A secret grand jury investigation was launched in LA County. 7 months passed. Investigators built their case, and on April 16, 2026, at approximately 5 p.m., LAPD's Robbery-Homicide Division took David Anthony Burke into custody in the Hollywood Hills. No bail, no public comment from his team. 2 words from a grieving father. And a case that is now in the hands of the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Major Crimes Division. That is where we are right now. That is the full picture as of today, April 21, 2026. There will be more. There will be updates. There will be new information as the legal process unfolds, and I will be covering every confirmed development right here on Jenny Exposes, because this story is not over. The legal journey for this case is really just beginning. And Celeste Rivas Hernandez deserves for this story to be told all the way to the end, accurately, honestly, and with the seriousness it demands. If you made it this far, thank you. Genuinely. This kind of video takes real research, real care, and real time. And the fact that you are still here means you care about getting the real story rather than just the sensational version. That means everything to this channel. So if you have not already, please hit subscribe and turn on your notifications right now, because when something new breaks in this case, you are going to want to be the first to know. Drop a like on this video if you believe that Celeste deserves honest, fact-based coverage, and leave me a comment below. What questions do you have about this case? What do you want to see covered in the next update? I read every single comment, and your questions genuinely shape what I cover next. This is Jenny from Jenny Exposes. I will see you in the next one.